Hey everybody, Jerome. Welcome back to our Wednesday's Real Talk on Real Estate. And today we're talking about buying or building. Is it better to buy a house or is it better to build a house? And so really more than anything, I want to talk about the scenarios of whether you're buying or building a house. Now, we've always built houses, but I've always bought my own personal home. And so most people are sitting back going, okay, well, what's the difference, Jerome, if you're going to buy or build? Now, the reason that we build homes is to generate revenue. And so one of the biggest things that we want to take into account is the profitability in building a home. And so people will sit back and say, okay, well, Jerome, if you're going to build and you have that much profitability, why don't you just build your own house? So a couple of things. One thing is I'm a real estate guy. So depends where you are in the game really depicts where you're going to be in regards to whether you should buy or build. Now, in regards to the market right now, if you're an investor, if you're a fix and flipper, if you're looking at buying and holding, you're doing like an Airbnb arbitrage model, you should be building houses. And here's why. So the profitability in building the houses is so much greater than purchasing right now because of inflation. And so if you look at the inflationary market, a lot of houses that were selling for $250,000 just 2 years ago are now selling for $350,000 today. So you don't have much equity in those. You're getting crammed as far as your equity holding on any of your assets. Now, if you're going to lease it, the equity is not as important as it is. It isn't as important today as it will be tomorrow. And so when you're looking at assets, you're looking at acquiring assets for long-term holdings to build a net worth, then it's good to have equity because your net worth grows quicker if you have equity in it. So I always tell people, let's say you want to build to be able to lease on short-term rentals through like an Airbnb arbitrage model, a short-term rental model, or if you want to buy and do a long-term hold, if you want to build and do a long-term hold where you're leasing, doing like the burst strategy, why not exercise the burst strategy? And for those of you guys who don't know what the burst strategy is let's say for example, when you go in, you buy a house, you remodel the house, that's the first R, then you rent the house, and then you refinance the house. That's the three bursts. So you go in, you buy, you remodel and renovate, and then you go in and you refinance, and then you rent it. And after you do that, you pull out a little equity and you hold the house. Now, that's provided you have equity in that house to refinance. If you don't have equity, and with everything is stimulated as it is in the market right now, you can exercise the burst strategy with buying land and building a new house and have substantially more equity. So like if you exercise our business model, you'll typically walk in with about $100,000 in equity. That's typically your profitability. Now, if you're holding, it's probably larger than that exercise in our business model because you don't have to pay out the commissions or the closing costs on the resale or to the buyer's broker and the seller's broker. So you might be someplace in the neighborhood of about $130,000, $140,000 in equity right off the bat when you buy land and build a house and then you hold it. So my mental capacity sits back and go, okay, if I'm exercising the burst strategy or I'm doing short-term rentals and I'm going to buy and hold for investment purposes, still buying land and building houses is better than buying as opposed to buying an asset because of the equity standpoint. You're building net worth. You have more equity holding into the asset that you're actually building as opposed to buying something fully inflated, renovating it, then holding it, and letting that equity grow over time. You're going to allow that equity to grow over time on a new build as well. Now, if you're buying land and building houses for a profit, then there's substantially more profit right now in buying land and building houses. Now, some people are sitting back, and I know exactly what you're thinking, Jerome. They've been talking recession, and yes, you're 100% right. And so now we're talking about today. Now, if you're watching this video today, just hit that subscribe button and pound that like button for the content. But if you're watching this video in the future, then I want you guys to pound those comments and put hashtag repeat. And so that way we know who you are when you're watching this video. Because somebody might be watching this video 6 months from now. And so in 6 months, 9 months, 1 year from now, we're going to see some market compression that's going to happen. Now, it doesn't happen overnight. Typically, it takes about 2 years to really see where the market is going to be once a recession starts to hit. Because in 2008, everybody talks about the 2008 recession, but the reality is that recession started in early 2007. It just took into the later parts of 2008 for us to really feel the effects of what was happening in 2007. But the warning signs, the the problems already existed in 2007, just like today. We're already going to start moving into that recessionary period because of what's happening with inflation and what the Feds are trying to do as far as raise interest rates to be able to stabilize inflation and bring inflation down to market value and bring costs down to more of a reasonable standpoint. And so as we do that, it's going to hinder people's buying power. Okay. Now, if you still want to make profits buying land and building houses, you have to follow the asset class that I'm talking about. And I've been talking about to my inner circle, people that are working with us. So, John, how are you, my friend? Anthony, welcome. John, going good. I am in some other channel that also teaches the idea that one simple way to wealth is to build one new house a year, no matter what else you are doing for a living. Yeah, that's probably me. I don't think there's anybody else teaching that unless they poach that information and are trying to teach that outside of what I'm doing, because I was the first one doing that. So now there might be another channel with someone copying, because that's what people do. But no one knows how to do it better than me, because I've been doing it since 1999, and we've amassed a fortune doing it, made millions of dollars doing it. So anyways, nonetheless, if you go in, you exercise this business model, and yeah, you could build one house a year part-time, and you could make over 100 grand in just passive income. And not passive income, it's semi-passive, because you only take about 10 hours a week to build one house. In the beginning, you might spend more time doing your first house because you're in the learning phases and you're probably a little nervous, and there's always a little bit of a learning curve. But once you learn the process and you built out like 2 homes, you're going to have substantially more profitability. Now, as we move into a recession, so in 2 years from now, if you're watching this video 2 years down the road and we're in the cusp of the recession, let's say you're watching this in 2024, 2025, or you're watching this today thinking ahead, and we're talking about a recession, we're talking about inflation kind of dropping down and the market kind of stabilizing. That's where opportunities grow in the value add market. That's where you can acquire assets at a discounted price and profit from them long term. So right now, there's a lack of inventory, right? So there's not a lot of inventory out there. And because there's not there's a lack of inventory out there, inflation is real and appreciated values are real. So people are paying a premium. Doesn't matter what asset class, doesn't matter what type of real estate you're buying. It could be a piece of crap, piece of real estate that has roof leaks and damaged walls. People are paying premiums for all real estate right now. Now, with that being said, because people are paying premiums to go out and lease that stuff, why not walk into it with equity? So when we talk about the build model, we talk about the build model in reference to one, equity standing, equity holdings, and profitability. Because equity holdings, if you have, for sake of example, a mortgage payment, and let's say you're building a $600,000 house. Okay, now if you pay retail for that $600,000 house and you're paying a 4%, 4.5% interest rate as an investor times 0.045, that's $27,000 per year to service your debt. Okay, now you're going to service that debt through whatever means of business you're utilizing on that house. So if you're doing a long-term rental, you need to make sure, so if you divide that by 12, you need to make sure you're charging more than $2,250 a month, maybe $3,000 a month in rental income now, or more. For a 4-bedroom house, that's a nice house. You'll probably be charging more than that. Now, for sake of example, if you're going to do short-term rental, same thing. You want to make sure you're making more than $2,700 a year in revenue to service that debt and start building equity in that asset. But if you have $150,000 in equity in that asset because you didn't finance out the equity and you only finance $450,000 to build that same asset, which is about what you'll need, times 0.045, that's $250. So you're going to make $7,000 more a year in revenue just by not having that additional $150,000 in equity if you're paying 4.5% interest on that loan. So substantial difference. You do that for a few years, your profitability is going to go up, and then the resale, you still own the equity in that asset. Plus, you're in for a lower amount of liability in regards to what you own that asset. And another thing you can do is you can go out and say, let's say for sake of example, the market stays stable. You say, you know what? I want to take that $150,000 of equity out of this asset that I build, and I am going to leverage it to $600,000. And so if you take a $600,000 asset and as an investor, you say, okay, I'm going to do an 80% loan to value times 8.8. That's $480,000. So you really only have $30,000. You might as well just keep the equity in there and own that equity and then just make larger profits. That's probably the better way to go instead of over leveraging yourself on a $600,000 asset. Now, if you had like that $600,000 asset was worth 680 and you were able to pull, let's say $100,000 of equity out of that house, you could put that $100,000 to work and go out and duplicate what you're doing. Now that's when you want to pull loans out and pull equity out, is when you have actual working capital that you could deploy back into building another house, maybe buying a piece of land, a down payment on a construction loan, and then you go in and you can duplicate the process with less liability, and then you double down on your profitability. That's when you want to pull equity out of your homes. Now, if you don't want the liability, you just want the revenue, then leave the equity, and then you can have that have those homes short-term rental or long-term rents. You can do long-term rentals on those. Now, for those of you guys who just want to make a profit, which what I do, I go in and I invest in long-term holdings like apartment complexes, more doors, larger volume, and I can give those off to a property management company, and I'm 100% passive instead of semi-passive like short-term rentals are. And then I'm able to take that revenue that I generate from selling that asset, and I have profitability. And you know, they always say cash is king. Well, cash is king when you have it to deploy into another asset. You don't want to hold on to that cash. Cash, when that you hold on to, is absolutely worthless. You don't want to hold on to cash. You want to deploy it into other stuff. Anthony, just finished watching your video on the recession. Yep. So you know what I'm talking about. John, Erica Williams talks about you. I don't know if you have been on her channel. I haven't, so I'll have to look her up. Okay. So everyone, don't forget to hit the like. Yeah, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Now, if you guys have questions, now buying right now is not the place to go. Okay. I wouldn't be buying houses right now. I wouldn't be buying houses, but if you're buying big assets, we're looking at some stuff up in Virginia right now that looks extremely attractive. And so we're migrating towards buying on some of our commercial assets, but not on residential. On residential assets, don't buy right now. Now, if it's for yourself, wait. Now, the reason I don't buy my own personal home, the reason I don't build my own personal home is because I can always get value. When the two houses that I bought them financially distressed, not physically distressed. There's a difference. I bought my houses financially distressed. So when I first bought my first home back in 1998, I bought it from a gentleman who was an electrician building his own home, and he wasn't completed on the construction, landed up going through a divorce. And in the divorce decree, he had to sell the house. So he sold it discounted. I was able to buy it at a discounted price, finish the house, and I walked in with tons of equity in that house. And I lived there for 18 years. When I bought my second house, it was a house that we had actually built, and the story's pretty cool. It was a $2.1 million home at that time. Now, probably valued well over $3.5 to $4 million. But at that time, 2.1 million. And then what happened is the gentleman who bought it went into bankruptcy about 6 months later. He tried selling it for a premium, and he did sell it for a premium. Then that person's actually the one that went into bankruptcy. Then my wife watched it for 5 years, and we just watched it. House was essentially brand new. No one lived in it. For 5 years, she watched it. And when it dropped to the number we liked, we went and bought it because we knew what the value was, and we bought it cash. And hence, we landed up with a ton of equity in that house, but we were patient. And so those type of opportunities are about to come over the next year to 2 years, but they're not right now. And even when we're buying distressed assets like that, guess what we continue to do? We continue to build, because building gives us revenue. And it's the only business in the construction and real estate industry at that time that continued to produce revenue for us when the market tanked, until we were able to purchase distressed assets. When we were able to purchase distressed assets that were financially distressed assets at discounted prices, we double dipped. We continued buying land, we continued building houses, and we continued turning profits. Our profits were a little smaller when we were building during the recession, but when we were making $130,000, we dropped to about $85,000 in profitability. Still a really good profit, but we were able to go out and double down and buy distressed assets at the same time. So building the houses gave us cash flow. We bought assets that we rent, leased, and held, just like the burst strategy. And we were able to hold and continue doing what we were doing, but we were double dipping doing both. Okay, so for those of you guys who are looking at it as a part-time endeavor, you can exercise as a part-time endeavor. But for those of you guys who are looking at it to say, look, Jerome, I like to start as a part-time endeavor, we get into it in a full-time endeavor, then you want to diversify. And as the market changes, your business plan will slightly change. But really, you're changing from a buying power to a selling power, a buying power to a selling power. What does that mean? In a buyer's market, you want to be a buyer, right? In a seller's market, you want to be a seller. And so you want to just teeter-totter between those two, depending on whether you're in the buyer's market or a seller's market. And really, you're a buyer all the time. You should never stop buying, because if you stop buying, you're out of the game. You should never be out of the game. It's just how you buy changes, whether you're in a seller's market versus a buyer's market. Now, in a buyer's market is when the market contracts and financially on a bell curve, it drops and goes down and values diminish a little bit. Then you buy because when it's going down, you know that at some point in time, historically, real estate starts to climb again. And so even though we might be right here in 2022, and even if it drops in 2023, 2024, we're going to hit the bottom of that bell curve someplace, and it's going to slowly start going up again. And at some point in time, maybe in 2026, 27, we're going to get to where we are today and surpass that. And we're going to see historical climbs that we've seen since the 1920s. So if you go back 70 years and look at real estate, you go back in over 100 years and you look at real estate, it continues to appreciate over time. And so I'll give you a perfect example. When we first started buying houses, again, after the recession in 2009, and we got back into some of the flipping and long-term holding in the Phoenix area and in the California area, we were buying assets that at the height of the market were pricing out, like in Laguna Beach, at $1,100 a square foot. That was at the height of 2006 and 7 when the market was at its highest. Then we were able to pick up those assets at $600 a square foot, ocean views right on PCH Highway, overlooking the ocean in Laguna Beach, and we were able to pick up those assets at $600 a square foot. So when those assets started climbing and it got close to $1,000 a square foot in like 2016, I told my wife, let's sell. Let's exit this real estate and let's get into something else. There's no way that this real estate is going to climb much higher than $1,100 a square foot. And I'm starting to get a little bit iffy as to how the market's going to teeter-totter and if it is going to teeter-totter. So we sold. Well, hence, those exact same properties now are selling for in excess of $1,500 a square foot. And some of those are in excess of $1,600 a square foot. So it surpassed that $1,100 a square foot in 2007. And now it climbed hundreds of dollars a square foot over that. And the same thing has happened in Phoenix. Houses that were selling for $120 to $120,000, we were able to pick up a lot of those houses to lease at like $30,000, $32,000 in 2009. Picked them up for dirt cheap. And then we accumulated a ton of them and a lot of little fourplexes that we accumulated, like 62 units of fourplexes plus 12 single family homes. And then we refinanced all that stuff, pulled all our capital out, rented those things for almost a decade and for just shy of a decade. And then we sold them and got into a big old $8 million building, which is now worth close to $15 million, just shy of $15 million. So we turned a bunch of little garbage into a $15 million asset, which is what you guys can do on the same scale, bigger scale, or smaller scale, depending on where you are mentally at the time and physically and financially at the time. But those same houses, I sold them for over $110,000 per house when I finally exited those properties. And those same houses now are selling for over $200,000 a house. So they've continued to go up in value. Now, they're going to drop. Those same houses that are now selling for $200,000 per house may drop down to $150,000 per value. But over the course of time, in 10 years from now, they might be worth $250,000, $280,000 in value just through natural, normal appreciation. But you're going to hit at the top of a bell curve, it's going to go down. You're going to hit the bottom of the bell curve, and it's going to climb. And it's going to climb. And then when it gets a little higher, then you'll hit another bell curve at some point in time. And that's just the way historically the real estate works. But if you just draw a straight line across it from the 1950s all the way to today, there's going to be bell curves that go up and down through that. But historically, it's going to straight line over the course. There's going to be growth over the course of the long haul. So the only people that really lose are those that can't hold their real estate. So hence, you should always be buying real estate. But point being is that when you're in a buyer's market, you should be a buyer. When you're in a seller's market, you should be predominantly be a seller. Now, what does that mean? We're predominantly in a seller's market right now, which means the benefits to the seller are greater than those are to the buyer. Why? Because people that are buying are paying premiums for real estate right now. So makes sense to buy land, build an asset, build a house, because there's not a lot of inventory out there, squeeze the variance between your cost and the value, pull that out as profit, and then deploy it into more real estate, or build it like I talked about, create a business model like short-term rental or long-term rental, just like you do the BRRRR strategy, and lease it and own that equity for long-term holdings. So you're creating wealth in your life. You're creating equity. You're creating a net worth. That equity goes towards your net worth, and you have that equity holding, and now you have cash flow from that asset if you're gonna build and hold. Now, if we go into a buyer's market during a recessionary period in a year from now, in 2 years from now, what's going to happen is you can continue building under our business model and create profits, but opportunity will come from distressed assets, either physically distressed or financially distressed. And personally, I don't like physically distressed assets because it takes too much time. We just had a project in Amarillo that Cody and I looked at, and I told Cody, scrap this thing. Too much work, too much liability. It's not worth it. You know what? I'd rather have a financially distressed asset that physically it's still a decent asset, nice asset. You can be revenue producing, but it's not so distressed that we have to go in and do a ton of legwork to get that asset profiting. So I like to take that asset that's financially distressed, fix the financial standpoint of it, and then get it cash flowing again. And so when there's a dip in the market, typically it's financially distressed because someone is over leveraged. And when someone is over leveraged and they can't refinance, they land up stuck between a rock and a hard place, and they can't refinance it, and they can't pull their equity out, and they start struggling on servicing the debt. When they start struggling to service the debt, they land up falling behind. And then the bank says, hey, Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer, you got to sell, or we're going to take it from you and we're going to foreclose on you. And that's where you walk in, you buy these financially distressed assets, reposition them at a better price point. Maybe the interest rates aren't as good, but at a better price point. And then you finance that, or you assume that loan from whoever has it, and then you reposition that asset for profitability, because now you picked it up at a compressed price, where maybe they paid $1 million for that asset. Now you picked it up for $700,000, and that variance between that $300,000 gives you a profitable standpoint that they didn't have because they were over leveraged. So anyways, you like the content, ladies and gentlemen, pound that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content just like this. And if you haven't already, watch my video that I recorded last week on the recession and where the market is moving towards. You're going to want to. I'll put that link in this video later, where at the end of the video, you can just click up and you can watch that recession video as well. Now, is there, let's see, Anthony had a question. Let's see what Anthony, how would you suggest someone who is not a tradesman get into a construction related business as an entrepreneur? I like to have a business that generates profits and can be used as equity capital. Exactly the same way, Anthony, that I take down assets in other states. I'm not a general contractor all over the world and all over the country. I am a general contractor in New Mexico, but where I live. And I used to be a general contractor in the Phoenix market. I no longer am in Phoenix, but I exercise the same trade values that I do as a general contractor, hiring general contractors to build them out for me. It's more of a passive model. Now I'm just the developer. And so what you got to do is you got to get out of the employee standpoint model, where you feel like you have to be the contractor mentally, and you have to be in there, and go move more towards the entrepreneurial model, where you go, I'm going to hire a general contractor. Now, there is different types of general contractors. Not all general contractors are the same. The way they get paid is entirely different. There's some that exercise an entire bid model, where they take the plans and what you're building, and then they give you a price on it, and that price is what you pay. And a lot of times, when you hire a bid model general contractor, you're going to give up a lot of your profitability. So I don't suggest you use those types. The type of general contractors I suggest you use are ones that get paid through what's called a cost plus model. So it's the cost of materials and labor plus a percentage. So you take the cost of materials and labor and pay them like 15%. That's the model I use on all my big apartment builds, on all my residential builds that are outside of the state. I hire general contractors and I pay them a cost plus model, so they can go in and just exercise the build the way they would normally do as a general contractor. And a lot of general contractors are not that sophisticated. They want to know they have a paycheck at the end of the month. So a lot of the less sophisticated general contractors, I mean, they're still incredible general contractors, still know what they're doing. You got to vet them out. You got to make sure that they have the experience in the asset class that you're building, whether it's single family home, multifamily, industrial warehouse. Make sure they've done it before. You don't want to be their guinea pig, is what I'm telling you. So we hire and interview general contractors just like we would an employee, to make sure we vet them out, to make sure they have the experience, they have the references and referrals, and they also have the capability of being able to do the build that we need them to do. And then we exercise the cost plus model, and then we manage paper. So what we do is we go in and we take bids also on what their subcontractors are doing, their material costs are. And if there's a big skew in their materials or their subcontractors, and they're trying to get paid a premium out of that, we question them. We say, hey, look, Mr. Contractor, I noticed that 3 reputable contractors are substantially less than your guy. You either need to get your guy to come to this number, or you need to fire your guy and use one of these guys. And so we're auditing paper. We're managing our product. So just like an entrepreneur, good entrepreneurs exercise other people's efforts. And so you don't want to be a solopreneur where you're the only one, you're a business. Then you're not an entrepreneur, you're a solopreneur. You're going after a business where you're doing everything. Don't think like that. You're an entrepreneur, exercise the efforts of other people there. And then you need other people's trades, their abilities. Okay. And you utilize other people's efforts to go out and profit from them. And you exercise a cost plus model, hire general contractors the way we do business in Puerto Rico, in Washington State, in Texas, in Arizona, in California, all across the board. Everywhere we do business, we do a cost plus model. Works very well. Hundreds of students that work with us, and they all kick ass doing a cost plus model. We have over a couple hundred people that are working with us in our inner circle, and we have over 40 builds going on right now in our inner circle, and they all use a cost plus model, and it works extremely well. Now, what I do as a general contractor, because my profitability is greater, and I'm here, right? So, and I'm a GC, may as well utilize it. But if you're not a GC, hire one. And that's the best way to even get bank loans. A lot easier to get bank loans and lending when you have a professional that has the experience vetted to go after it and do it. Okay. What type of lenders are available for building and developing? A lot. There's a lot of lenders. Lending is not an issue. If you have a viable business model in any sector and you're capable, and you have a capable general contractor, you'll get lending. Lending's not an issue. Now, it might become more of an issue for inexperienced people as we move into a recession, but there's traditional lenders that'll lend to you all day long. Now, there's a lot of hard money lenders and bridge loan lenders that'll lend to you. And like I tell people, there is a barrier of entry to building versus buying. And the reason why is because you're going to have to give up a little bit more meat on the bone. Now, where I go in, and right now it's a seller's market, I can make $200,000+ on one build that's selling for $650,000, $700,000 on a new build. I can make $150,000 on a $550,000, $600,000 build. Now, where traditionally I'm making about $100,000 to $135,000, it just so happens that the market's in my favor right now. Now, those times will change. So don't go in and say like a fat hog and say, damn, I'm making $200,000 on every single build and expect that forever, because it's not going to happen. You're going to get back down to the median. And through our business model, the median is going to be some place of a profitability between 135 to 150 as far as profitability, 135 to $150,000 as far as profitability. Now, if you have to give up a little meat on the bone, the reason I always tell people, figure $80,000 to $100,000 in profitability, because if this is your first build, a hard money lender is going to charge you more money. A bridge loan lender is going to charge more money, and there's tons of them out there. And there's specific hard money lenders that are backed by institutional banks that lend specifically on construction loans. And there are a lot of our affiliates. You work with our team, we give you all those affiliates, those phone numbers, those contacts to go out and vet them. And there's private money. And so if you do private money, you're going to have to give up some equity. But there's a barrier of entry. You give up a little bit of equity over the course of time. Guess what you land up with? Capital. You might not make as much capital in the beginning, but through that barrier of entry, a year from now, 2 years from now, you do 1, 2, 3 of these. Now you have capital. Now, all of a sudden, your buying power, your borrowing power starts to increase because of your capital abilities. Now it becomes a lot easier, a lot simpler. So your first one is your hardest because you're scared. You don't know what you're doing. So you just have to follow a mentor's guidelines in their footsteps and what we're doing. And then the second one, you learn a lot more than the first one because now you got some clarity. You're not as scared. You've already done it once before. So on your second one, I always tell people, you always learn more on your second one than you do your first, because your first, you have your blinders on. You're like a deer in headlights going, oh my God, what am I doing? And then you get through the first build and it goes successfully because you followed a roadmap. You didn't go out there like a deer with no direction. We put a leash on you and we put, come this way, you're okay, you'll be fine. Come this way, and we pull the tug on you, and then you're successful out of your first one. Your second one, you sit back with the blinders off. You're not starstruck, and you go, I got this. And then all of a sudden, you go, I don't remember that on my first build. I don't remember those problems. I don't remember having those issues. And then all of a sudden, your second one, you become more fluent. By your third one, you go, okay, I got this. So third, fourth, you do good. Then your fifth or sixth one, you do dumb shit, and I'll tell you why. Because now your fifth, sixth one, you're like, oh yeah, I'm a veteran, baby. I got this shit. I got this. And then you start doing dumb things because you get cocky and arrogant. You go, man, I got this. I got this all figured out. I'm a badass. I don't need Jerome to do this with. I never did. I never needed his dumb shit. I got this all figured out, right? Because now you're a badass. Now you start doing dumb shit, and then something happens like a recession. You go, oh shit, I only made like 40 grand on this house because I did dumb shit and I thought I was a badass. You get humbled again. Seventh, eighth build, you get back to the basics that we teach you. And then you sit back and go, now I got this. Now that's when you really have it. And so you do get to like your eighth, ninth house, then you really have it. But guess what? You're making profitability all the way there. It's just how you make it and what you're going through psychologically, mentally, physically is slightly different. And so I promise, some of you guys are sitting back laughing, going, Jerome, that'll never happen to me. I'll never do that. I'll never be that guy. I promise you will be. I was that guy. Everybody becomes that guy, that gal. And it doesn't become about the person who led you there anymore. It becomes about you being a badass. And so I tell people, don't make it about me. It's not about me. Don't ever come and say, hey, Jerome, without your help, I could have never done it. No, you were the one that took action. You're the action taker. But if you lack in action and you lack in wisdom because you don't exercise the wisdom that we give you, then that's also your fault too. So don't give me the glory, but don't give me the burden of your distress if you get stupid on your fourth or fifth build. Stay consistent, implement what we teach you, and then because you're an action taker, take the glory, take the profits, and run with it. Because that, at the end of the day, is ultimately the goal, right? You become the action taker, and let it be because you successfully did it. But if you guys want to know whether you should buy or build right now, build. Build, because there's no inventory. Profitability and equity is much greater, much better than what it is right now. And as we move into a recessionary market, continue to build, but then you can deploy some of the earnings from building into buying. When it becomes a buyer market, become a more aggressive buyer. Take the affluency from building and invest it into buying, but continue building, because I promise if you build right, there'll always be profitability in building. There's still a massive need for rooftops. So both are profitable, but right now building is profitable, way more profitable than buying. So don't be buying, build. Okay. Now, if you didn't see my recession video, again, I'm going to put that link below. And when you hit replay on this, you'll be able to watch that recession video. You want to go in and take a look at that. Let's see here. A couple more questions here before we wrap it up. Let's see. Have you ever used a modular builder? No, I haven't. I don't have that need. I don't want to do modular building. There is a market for that. And if you're doing like tract building, where you're doing master plan communities and a lot of building, then modular build is good. But if you're doing like onesie, twosie houses, you're making 100 grand, you're doing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these a year, you don't really need a modular build. It takes too long. I'd rather just stick build, and my framers can throw a house up. My framers can throw up a $700,000 house in 7-8 working days, less than 2 weeks. They can frame an entire house. So that's why I don't do modular, because you do modular, you still have to do it. Now, modular is going to become something extremely popular in the future. And when the science of modular homes gets really, really fine-tuned and contractors become more familiar with it, it'll become profitable. But right now, don't modular build unless you're doing mass volume. Mass volume is where the savings is in modular building. Okay, I have a deal in Puerto Rico, 12.5 acre beachfront. Yeah, I mean, bring it to us. We're building over in the St. Regis. We're building out $15 million houses in the St. Regis right now, Ty and I. So yeah, we got some stuff going on in Puerto Rico. Depending on where it is and what beachfront it's on, there's a lot of variability in there. Do you have videos, courses on cost plus contracting? Yeah, we have a full 12-week program. I go over all that stuff, and you'll find it randomly through my YouTube channel. I talk about it here and there randomly, but yes, we got a full online course. Follow my content, DM us. We'll send you a link. We can schedule a call with my team. If somebody from my team is watching, stick the link in the chat, and we'll get that over to you. Otherwise, follow us on Instagram, and we will. You guys can just click on the link. We'll DM you the link. Just hit us up on Instagram. Need your mentorship? Yes, you do, Ruben. You do need my mentorship. I will help you for sure. Great content, Jerome. Great followers. I love you guys. Thank you guys. You guys go out and make it a great day. Thank you for joining us on Real Talk on Real Estate. For more content just like this, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And we do these live weekly, and then we also post additional information. And right now, ladies and gentlemen, we're documenting the process of buying land and building houses from start to finish. I bought 2 lots just for you guys, and we're barely at the beginning. I think we're on video number 9. We're just doing the plumbing rough-in. We haven't even poured the foundation yet, and we're documenting it from the plans, the architecture, and what to do when you buy the land, all the way through the entire build, and we're documenting that process for you. Click and subscribe. We'll see you guys on the next video. Watch our documented process. Watch what's happening economically. Follow our content, and I'll see you guys next Wednesday on Real Talk on Real Estate. Thank you guys, and God bless.